Good evening and welcome back to Homebrew. Today we are going over the recap for our session 2 of the Taking Root campaign between me and Sarah in a duet of the Genesis system, and going over the prep for session 3. So, to start off here, I think that the original episode 2, went off pretty well. That being said, we can always improve, right? So, first thing about what went right is that we indicated the danger that was Holden Ford at the time of the Twillet right out the gates, which was really important because we needed our character to understand that something could come around the corner and kill them, right? And we didn't know what manner that let them still be curious, right? We didn't just say, hey, move on or something along those lines. So that ended up going pretty well. The character, Sarah's character, Emery, ended up going into the town, which still ended up going pretty well. We had planned for this and we actually hoped for it. So that way we could use a lot of the content that we spent a lot of time making previously. So with them going into town, we were able to instill this sense of urgency that you need to get somewhere safe, which allowed us to introduce a couple of other components. We had an opportunity for combat for our player, but they still declined it, and we made sure that that was going to be something that was within their capability as well. So I think that all went really well. They also forced them to have conversation with several NPCs. Now, originally, the NPCs that we created were going to be characters throughout the entirety of the city to make the city seem interactable. But it was okay because our character, being confined to this area, had a chance to have a lot of good quality conversation with those people. So that being said, one thing that kind of came from that was, being able to get a little bit more information on the Iron Cathedral and send them that way. We happened to have enough information to be able to just improv while they were there to make the place seem like it provided a lot of services, right? Now, what we didn't realize is that we didn't give our player a chance to practice their magic, and this is a background for their magic that they've acquired before the next campaign too. So we got to work on that a little bit. I don't think we'll have a lot of opportunities in Holden Ford for them to sit down and her and Archek and sing Kumbaya and really practice on that, but that's something that should be noted, that that's one of the items that we could improve on. Technically speaking, right now, as far as her level goes, Emery has access to 5 spells. But that being said, she's currently, I haven't given her any of them because we wanted it to be thematic. Now, we talked about it before, me and Sarah, and she's perfectly fine with this. So that would be one thing that if you had other players and you were doing that, that wouldn't be something that you just decide as a DM. You definitely want your players' consent for that, okay? So, definitely room for improvement there. Also, we had a lot of names and a lot of other items that we had to make up on the fly. The names of the taverns, the names of the people within the taverns. We had a couple of them that we're able to use, but other ones, as well as the name of in the Iron Cathedral, the names of all of the NPCs interacted with there. Now, what I do is I just write down all that stuff as I go, and then what I do is I just update my notes afterwards. So I make up my NPCs on the fly. You'll see that at one point I named 2 people Gertrude and said, hey, never mind about that. That's something that your players are going to be completely comfortable with. It doesn't break the fourth wall or immersion too much, but that's something that I'm good at, or at least I think that I'm comfortable enough with, where I don't need to bog down and make charts and charts of names and backgrounds and stuff like that with your people, because you're probably going to flub some of it anyway, so you might as well just write it down as you go, right? And now I've got characters that I can pull in for later. So basically we rolled right through and did some of the preparatory stuff on the side quests that we had already prepared for, and that went all pretty well, and it left us in an opportunity to ask ourselves, how long do we want this to drag on, because we potentially make a whole campaign on having Emery follow down the Hounds of Reclamation. Well, I wanted to get about 2 or 3 sessions worth of material out of this before we moved on, just based off of our timeline and how much depth I wanted to have to the world. And so looking at that, what we can see is that really all we really have to do for session 3 is flush out this pursuit of the Hounds of Reclamation. We really don't need to go any further than that. And if for some reason Sarah blasts through it really quickly, we already have some notes on what they're going to be doing as far as getting a hold of Osaya, the boat captain, and continuing down the water like that. And so really, we don't need to worry about that. I was able to take all those notes, put it in the spot here I labeled post Holdenford, and really just focus in on this Thieves Guild stuff. Now, what we didn't do last time is we didn't really flush out. We just said, hey, generic Thieves Guild, generic bad guys, they're up to shenanigans, right? So what I basically had to do for this session is flush that out a little bit more in detail. Now, I wasn't drawing necessarily maps of the tunnel systems of the thieves and building up their whole economy or anything like that. You just need enough to get your player going in the right direction and make it seem genuine, right? So you don't have that gamification or the suspension of disbelief doesn't get too ruined or something along those lines. And so what you'll see here is for session 3, we mentioned Penelope. That was a made-up NPC that Archek went and visited, so Sarah's character didn't even get a chance to see them. But we mentioned, hey, Penelope gave Archek this quest, right? And essentially the people at the prison said, hey, we should go talk to Penelope, and she should be able to set you up with a Thieves Guild, okay? Now, we didn't necessarily specify how in-depth that should be, and so that was one of the items that we really wanted to look at was what information does the Iron Cathedral have on these thieves? Are they lock heel step by step, or is there something a little bit more detailed? So I'm actually going to bounce back up to here onto our planning phase. So how do you get a hold of the Thieves Guild? What do we need to know about them? So for me, I thought, hey, this is a good chance to make the Thieves Guild their own unique thing. So what I did is I actually came up with a character. It's named the head of the Thieves Guild, Harlequin Pincushion. Okay, you can make her really creepy. Someone in a sequence suit with sequenced jester suit with a mime mask on. Make them not talk all the time. Make them do a lot of voodoo. Classic, right? And then have the thieves be named the tailors, right? So people who stitch up suits, maybe people who make up these voodoo dolls that the main person uses. Now you got a creepy little vibe that you can use with this own faction. Now you got 3 different factions built around the city that we're just stopping through, and suddenly it seems like a little bit more of an immersive world, right? The next thing I thought was, hey, let's separate out the Thieves Guild from the Iron Cathedral a little bit, right? What I mean by this is make it so it's a little bit harder for you to get a hold of the Thieves Guild than just click A or go talk to Jimmy, right? So what I decided is I made 3 different options that Penelope thought were options for Sarah's character to be able to get a hold of them. And what we did is we made one quote-unquote right way, meaning everything goes as perfectly as planned. We decided that would be option 2. We made one that is completely... we need another one that was a outdated way of getting a hold of them, and the Thieves Guild are going to have it booby-trapped. And then we're going to have a third one that was never a way to get a hold of the Thieves Guild to begin with, but maybe it'll work just from, drawing attention. All 3 of these could potentially draw attention to the Thieves Guild and make them ask, hey, what's up, right? So that's kind of the point is... At this point, it's just making our character have to pick and choose, and it's kind of arbitrary about which one they feel is they're comfortable with. But that's where the agency comes into play, and they could probably suss out some reasons why some of these won't work too, right? So I think that's about as much as we need for that. Next thing we had to think of is what are the Thieves Guild? Why would the Thieves Guild give you the information from the Hounds of Reclamation, their path out of town, right? And so I decided was, the Thieves Guild, we've already planted that there's some problems with the Thieves Guild trying to get goods smuggled into the prison because the guards are already corrupt, right? And the guards are basically taking away their profits because they'll just walk it in for a cheaper price than maybe smuggling it up and through a window, right? And so one of the things that the Thieves Guild might want is just really nice and easy, a guard rotation, right? Take the corrupt ones, put them somewhere useful where they can bribe them, and take prickly guards off of the road who are stuck up lawmen, put them in the prison, and suddenly now people are forced to use the Thieves Guild to get the materials, right? So that's just a great easy way of being able to give the players something that is within their power. The players can't switch the guards, but they know the Iron Cathedral probably can, right? And so now you don't have the players trying to pay the Thieves Guild to give them the information that they need to continue their quest. Next thing is, what kind of information are they actually going to give them, right? So the Thieves Guild probably stumbled across this path that the Hounds of Reclamation are using to get out of town. And, an extra way out of town is a very useful thing, so that's why they probably would want to do this trade. But the next thing is they also don't want to piss off those other guys, right? So I figured, why don't we make this an interactive route? And so what I decided to do is I built a small map for this. And so, I just kind of thumbed around and thought about what different options we could have, and I thought what would be kind of cool and would be building into the theme of Emery and whatnot is, what if we had a garden exit? Like some sort of back garden. So once I got here there's a groundskeeper who's been paid off to allow hedges to grow and block views in these like city gardens that basically blocks the view to a certain area of the garden that is next to the perimeter of the city. And then essentially the Hounds of Reclamation have been booby-trapping that so that way they can get through, but other people who are trying to follow them or someone who stumbles into it can't get through, okay? And so we just made a quick little plan, some dangerous plants in there, maybe put some antidotes there so that way people get stung. They can try to drink the antidote to cure them. That's how the hounds would get through the poisonous plants. What our player would be presented with is, maybe make it something where you do a vigilance check or a perception check, and suddenly they see that there's this box there. They open up the box and there's a strange liquid. Do you drink it? Do you not? Maybe they get more information from an alchemy check. So you have a route to get through these poisonous plants, and a route of potential failure, which doesn't completely impede them. I figure the next thing I add is, how do they actually get out, right? And so I made this quick little map. Just from some ideas that I was ping-ponging around on. And what essentially we have is we have a pond in a garden. They can walk straight over and look into the pond, and the pond is going to be black just from inky stagnation of stuff in there, right? And basically there is a stream that leads towards this area of town outside, and there's actually been a little underwater tunnel that leads from this pond outside, and the Hounds of Reclamation have been taking this path and then following the stream up, or the small brook up into the woods, which makes it hard for people to be able to see their foot tracks. Right now you got a perfectly legitimate path that's both blocked, or it's not seen from outside the garden or inside the garden if people were doing perimeter checks. So we got our escape plan. How do they guard it? Well, 1, poisonous plants. 2, why don't we throw a statue in here? This could be fun. So I put a gargoyle, lion gargoyle, who's looking at the pond. Now that my thought is let's add some interactive thing. And what I decided to do was, if anyone comes up out of the water, the lion will see them, and because it sees them directly, it won't attack them. But he's been assigned to attack anyone whose reflection he can see, which would essentially be anyone coming in near this. We'll have the entrance kind of be over here, and then what we'll have is, if they come closer come in over here, and if they come closer towards this bench, the lion triggers and comes after them. And then what we can do is we can put a little sticky note on the back of his head, and it says, such and such is the off code, and such is the on code for the gargoyle. So that way, if our players manage to get through all of these poisonous traps, walk around here and look at the lion, then they can see, oh, hey, there's something in a strange language. If I do a knowledge check or something like that, I know how to turn this thing off. Maybe someone else was forgetting the passcode, right? They walk in, they go, crap, what was that? They take the antidote, they walk around, they look at that, okay? The other opportunity that they can do is, remember that if the lion sees them before they see the reflection. In this case, let's just say the code is if you walk in, jump into the pond right in front of the lion, from the lion's side, then you don't get attacked by it, right? So now we've got ways that our Hounds of Reclamation could traditionally use this path and be safe, whereas if people who didn't know any better use the path, they would not be safe. And there we go. We briefly mentioned we figured out how the water got here, and that helped us figure out how we wanted to make a path for the Hounds of Reclamation to get out of the proximity of town into the woods. The next thing that we had to do is make a base, right? And for us, very simple. The woods are protected by the Wolund and by the creatures of the night that call it home, right? So that means that they don't really need to worry about people getting too close who have no business being there, right? So we just said, hey, shack in the woods, right? And then in order to make it extra culty feeling, we say, why don't we throw in some sort of ritual? And so I thought, what would be really cool is if they're trying to summon their god, Black Phillip, to, help deal with these ghosts and stuff like that they're pulling out of town, or these skeletons. Maybe they're just dispatching them in town, but maybe a couple times they're bringing them out to try to summon their god to dispose of these guys, right? And so I thought that would be really cool. So I decided to make a ritual that's being overseen by a Leshen. Right? So a big spiritual, kind of horrific creature, but could be seen as chaotic, neutral, something along those lines, but maybe evil depending on the person. But definitely something that would be overseeing some sort of like return to nature ritual, locally speaking, right? So the second point of this is if we've got our player. So I made up a little map here. I can pull up onto the screen here for you guys too. So if we got our player run into the woods, deal with a whole bunch of spooky, scary nights, what we can do is now we've got this Leshen who's really strong, and you might think, oh man, that's even worse, right? What's our player going to do about all these guards and these Leshen? Well, one, our player doesn't have to deal with them, right? We made it kind of a part 1, part 2 clause. For 2 gold, which is more than enough that they need to get out of town, they can just report their findings. And if they want to get extra credit for a lot of other money, they can attempt to disperse all this. Well, our lead character is a Wolund, known to have authority in this area. They can actually call on this Leshen. And I just decided, by the way, to make the Leshen have the ability to summon crows to his bidding. He can actually call on them to help, right? And say, hey, you're on my side, deal with these guys. And so that's one of the things that you give as an out. So if our player does decide to combat, we have legitimate reasons to intervene with this Leshen, right? And our player can try to use their smarts to try to cause that to happen as well. I decided also that the guards were going to be basically using really nasty ritual hooks, shepherd's hooks, to hook into a ghost, because it's magical, and be able to like cause them to turn into ectoplasm, and they've been storing them in these jars, and that's what they're sacrificing to their god Black Phillip. So they got jarred ghosts in here, and basically what they were doing is they've got pigs that they're going to do a ritual on, and the pig's going to grow horns, and that one's ram's horns, that is, and that one's going to be an incarnation of their god. It's going to eat the ghosts, and that's what they're trying to do here, right? Well, our character can release those ghosts from those jars by smashing them, and now they've got ghosts on their side too, okay? So now we've got this whole situation. We had to add one extra lead figure to the guard, so we added a guard captain, or an extra Hound of Reclamation, so we got a knight captain here. We gave them a name, we called them Keela. So if you look at our notes here, we've got, what Penelope knows, giving them the quest. Once you accept the quest, this is some information that you have. Once you get inside the garden, this is what happens. Once you're outside, this is what happens. And there we go. Once you get to the hounds, they're led by this orcish woman with a basic description of her with the Lost Knight stats. So Keela can talk to her, being Emery, and say, hey, this is what we're doing, stay out of here, or whatnot, and we'll have some dialogue there. 5 guards, I just use guard stats, but these would be knights that are helping her out. So some lower figure minion entities that can help really turn up the heat, so to speak, with this particular fight. And then what we did is we got our adversaries page, quick list of all of our people with stats. So we got the gargoyle here, we got the Leshen, we got the Leshen summon, which is a flock of crows, we've got the specters, and then we've got the town guard, and the Lost Knight is basically just the main elite Keela, who's leading the Hounds of Reclamation. So there we go. We got all of our stats there. Down below, I've got Archek stats and Archek summons, which is the Timbermen and the Critters. And so we can throw those in at any point in time. Ready to rock. So aside from that, we've got it's kind of hard to see here for you guys, but in the DM layer on this one, I have all of these characters. So what I'm basically going to do is when our main character comes up this way, we'll have them, we'll throw all these down, but for now I left them into the DM layer specifically because I wanted to be able to throw my player onto this map. We're going to have it be evening time, and so it's going to be harder to see. And well, what I can do is, actually, let me just do it real quick. If I take Emery, throw her on the map. Ooh, that's a big lady. No, we need her to be about this big. I can hit Control L, and if anyone's familiar with Roll20, this is exactly kind of the area that they can see. So a little bit of a fire up on the hill. Actually, oops, I have her over here in this corner anyways. Sorry about that. We can see that there's some torches on the front of this building, and then there's all that stuff going on in the hills, so to speak. And we've got trees blocking it, so if they're going to use some sort of special ability to get extra light, then cool. We also got this building here, which is going to be empty, so she can loot it, maybe find papers, anything that we want Imprompt to do on the Hounds of Reclamation, give her some extra insight, write down notes on what we did as far as in the moment, and then we're good to go. So I hope that was helpful for any of you DMs out there looking to figure out how to piece this stuff together, and I will be seeing you guys for session 3 of Taking Root. Thank you.